Whatever else we can say about the new Calvinism, and there's a lot we can say, we at least can't deny this. It displays many, many evidences of God's grace. It's beyond dispute. God has been blessing his people. God has been glorifying his name through this movement. Well, in this video, I want to point out just 6 evidences of God's grace that we've seen in this Reformed resurgence. I hope you find it helpful. The first evidence of God's grace in this Reformed movement is its enthusiasm for sound doctrine. See, if there's an unofficial textbook for New Calvinism, it's got to be Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology. If there's an unofficial study Bible, that honor has to go to the enormous ESV Study Bible. The elder statesmen of the movement, they're pastor theologians. Its rising generation of male leaders are primarily preachers. Female leaders are primarily Bible teachers. Its conferences, whether those are for men or women or youth, they tend to be based on teaching how the Bible applies to all of life. The books, they tend to be committed to displaying the centrality of the gospel and to promoting the glory of God in all things, and of course, promoting biblical literacy. Even the music is deliberately theological and is helping generate this revival of hymnody and other forms of music that are theologically robust and significant. So, from beginning to end, New Calvinism, it's a movement founded upon and defined by the doctrine laid out in Scripture. That is God's grace. A second evidence of God's grace within the New Calvinism is its local church centrality. See, it would be easy to define New Calvinism by its many conferences, from Shepherd's Conference, the Bethlehem Conference for Pastors, the Basics, Gospel Coalition, Together for the Gospel. We could go on and on. There's no doubt New Calvinism is a movement made up of 1,000 different conferences. It would also be easy to define New Calvinism by its many, many ministries and its many organizations. We've got Grace to You, and we've got Desiring God, and we've got Ligonier, and again, we could go to the Gospel Coalition and Together for the Gospel and all of these. But I think to define the movement by any of those ministries, that would be to miss the point. Because New Calvinism is first a movement of Christians within their local churches. One of the most important marks of the New Calvinism, at least according to my assessment, is its focus on the centrality of the local church, its emphasis on healthy local churches. So each one of these conferences, each one of these organizations, if you go looking, you'll see they are committed primarily to strengthening and equipping, and committed not to displacing the local church. That's a right emphasis. It's a good emphasis. Because as we know, God's plan for the world is not conferences, it's not parachurch ministries, it's strong, Bible-based local churches that are led by qualified leaders. These ministries and organizations, they help. Third mark of God's grace is biblical ecumenism. It's a sad reality of life in a fallen world. We find it easy to splinter, difficult to unite, and so much of church history can be told by divisions that have kept Christian from Christian. At times, these divisions have been necessary. We've had to divide to protect the purity of Christ's church. Far too often, though, they've been disputes over petty little theological nuances. There's no reason to stay apart because of those. Well, from the very beginning, New Calvinism has been a movement that emphasized a biblical ecumenism. It's united on the gospel and on a few key implications of the gospel, and then it's deliberately brought Christians into shared relationship, into shared ministry, into shared mission. Many of its conferences, many of its ministries, they're diverse by their design. They're meant to draw together denominations and churches and individuals that otherwise would probably prefer to remain independent and unaffiliated. So New Calvinism is committed to keeping the main thing. That is God's grace. A fourth evidence of grace is the New Calvinism's international impact. This movement began primarily in America. It was given its names by American publications. It's led primarily by Americans. It's even dominated by Americans in terms of who's part of it. Despite all of this, it always has been an international movement that's making its mark all around the world. Think about its books. They're shipped all over the globe. Its blogs are accessed from pretty much every country on earth. Its major conferences, they're drawing people from all over. Wherever there are Christians, wherever those Christians are eager to be taught, wherever they're eager to be trained, well, there are people right there who associate themselves with this movement. It really is increasingly a truly international movement. At the same time, it's also growing in its mission reach. You have people like John Piper and David Platt and Paul Washer and many others like them, that they're emphasizing the responsibility of every Christian to serve and to support global missions, which means that churches and denominations and sending agencies, all of these associated with the new Calvinism, they've been faithful, increasingly faithful, to send missionaries across the world, but then also to create excellent resources to serve and to support people across the globe. A fifth evidence of grace is deploying new technologies and doing it well. Even a brief survey of church history, you do that and you'll find that worldwide Christian movements usually follow on the heels of new technologies. So the spread of the gospel in the early church, it was really made possible through this new technology, this new communications technology of the Roman roads. 1,500 years later, this new technology of the printing press, again, a communications technology. It provided a way to distribute the writings of the reformers. Even more so, their new translations of the Bible were through the printing press. Well, today we're witnessing the dawn of this digital revolution, the next great communications technology. And in just a short time, we've gained access to all kinds of new tools, all kinds of new capabilities these tools bring. And most of these tools exist for communicating, the very tasks that God calls us to in the Great Commission, these tasks of evangelism and discipleship. Well, never before have we been able to have people and words go so far and so fast. And New Calvinism has been on the front lines of creating and adapting and using these new tools. So websites and blogs and conference live streaming and podcasts and YouTube and digital books and Bibles, none of these existed just a few short years ago. And yet today, each one of them has been understood. Each one of them has been harnessed for God's good purposes. One final evidence of God's grace I'll point out is this movement's grounding in church history. See, every generation grapples with this temptation to neglect history, to assume we stand on our own in history. We've got nothing to learn from people who have gone before. But New Calvinism has been shaped by previous generations of Christians, by pastors, leaders, theologians who lived even centuries ago. New Calvinism has this desire to orient itself deliberately and faithful in the long history of the Christian faith. So yes, it's emphasized correct doctrine. It's also emphasized church history. It focuses a lot of attention on the lives and legacies of great men and great women of days that have gone by. So people now are going back to the Reformers, back to the Puritans, back to the old theologians to read their works. Here in 2017, almost every major conference has focused on the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. What does it mean to us today? So in this way, New Calvinism is looking back even as it looks forward. It's drawing from ancient sources of wisdom and asking, how can we apply it to our modern realities today? So in these ways, and there's many, many more I could speak of, New Calvinism is clearly displaying evidences of God's hand of blessing upon it. Souls are being saved, lives are being transformed, churches are being strengthened, missionaries are being sent. The work of the Lord is being carried on in so many different ways. Why don't you stay tuned for my next video where we'll turn a little bit and I'll offer maybe just some of the potential areas of weakness in the movement that we would do well to address. I hope you found this one helpful. If you did, hit the like button. And why don't you consider subscribing? Then you'll be notified of future videos as I put them out. And I hope to see you again really soon.